Good evening, everybody in the audience. Tonight is the regular meeting of the Tuesday, March 28th Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. May we have a roll call vote, please, or not vote, roll call, please?
Chair Story.
Here.
Commissioner McDaniel.
Present.
Commissioner Aguilar.
Here.
Commissioner Lassard.
Here.
Commissioner McCornack, are you online? Okay. Commissioner Henderson.
Here.
Commissioner Gutierrez.
Here.
So we have 6 present. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Meredith. Next, we will have a swearing in of all the members of staff and members of the audience.
Anybody that's going to testify this evening, would please stand and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you give here this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, under penalty of perjury? Say, I do. I do. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Next, we have approval of the agenda of tonight's March 28th meeting. If anybody's had a chance to look at it, and am I going to make any changes? If not, I would accept a motion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Jana and a second by Jesse to approve the agenda from the March 28th, 2023 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Agenda is approved as is. Next, we have approval of the minutes from the January 24th, 2023 meeting, because we didn't have one in February, correct? So that is our last meeting, of which I was not in attendance, so I will be abstaining from voting on that. But I would, if there's not any changes, then I would accept the motion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Saul and a second by Jana to approve the minutes from the January 24th, 2023. Would that be right? Yeah. That's right. Meeting. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Minutes are approved. Next, we have our first public hearing item is case 23-002, request for a change for a zoning district. Could we have, well, okay, let's see here. Could we have a waive, somebody motion to waive the reading of the finding of facts?
Excuse me, Chair Story. I think,
Oh.
I would like to abstain from this particular vote, citing a possible conflict of interest.
Okay. We can certainly do that. Let's see here. So Richard is going to.
go ahead.
Richard is going to abstain due to a conflict of interest on this case and will not be participating in the show Richard has. You don't have to leave the room, Richard.
Richard. He didn't have. Hello. Come back. He does.
Okay, so Richard has
Left the building.
left the building. Didn't need to, but he has. So if we could have a motion to waive the reading of the finding of facts.
So moved. Second.
I'm going to get out with Steve. He's a little quick. Okay. Get him involved. Okay, we have a motion by Jesse and a second by Steve to waive the reading of the finding of facts and the land use and zoning considerations for case 23-002. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Meredith, you want to present the case to us, please?
Good evening, Chair Story, Commissioners. We have a request for a zone change at 1601 South Garden Avenue by Chavez County for a public health office. It's currently zoned R3 residential, and the request is to rezone to institutional. Here you see where the property is located on Hobbs and Garden. The North Street is Buena Vista, and Pecos Elementary is below that, south of Hobbs. And Pecos Elementary on the zoning map is already zoned institutional, and the county would also like to have their 3.8 acre parcel zoned institutional as well. Here you see a table of the various zoning, surrounding zoning. So north residential, south is Pecos Elementary, and a corner vacant lot, institutional in R3. West side of Garden is R2, and that vacant corner lot that's adjacent to the parcel under consideration is R3, and to the east, there's one residential house and then vacant residential lots. This is a photo, staff photo, looking northwest from Hobbs at the Pecos Elementary at the tract. It's vacant. And this is from the north side, and you can see Garden along the west side to the right. There will be an entrance on Buena Vista, which you just saw here, but that won't be the entrance. It'll be farther down to the east. And then also, like, you can see the drive entrance on Garden as well. At this time, there's no planned entrance on Hobbs across from the elementary school. As of today's date, we've received zero written and zero verbal protests and zero inquiries. So based on the land use and zoning considerations, findings of fact surrounding land uses, regulations established in the zoning ordinance, staff recommends approval of this case. So now it's time to hear from our city engineer and from anyone else in the audience wishing to speak.
Meredith, I have a question for you before you move on. The aerial photo, can you go back to it? Right there, where the star is, and there's that little parcel there in the southwest corner that's blocked off. Is that also owned by the county and is included in the zone change?
It is not at this time. So
just that one corner parcel will remain R3?
at this time, it will remain R3.
Who is the owner of that without me looking it up? Do you remember?
The next page is,
I think it's just a private landowner.
number 2. Vacant lot, Stites.
Bethany Stites and Sunday Oyatola. Okay.
I think I know who that is.
Okay. Any questions of Meredith before we go to Lewis? Thank you, Meredith. Lewis, you got anything to add?
Negative. Engineering's in full support.
That being said, is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak for this case? Please state your name and address, please.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, my name is Bill Williams. I'm the Chaves County Manager. I'd like to thank you for considering case 23-002. I'd also like to thank Meredith and Lewis for all their hard work working with us to develop this to bring to you. Chaves County, as you're aware, is required by state statute to provide for a public health department. With all of the federal funds that have come down over the last couple of years, we felt that probably the best thing we could do for our community would be to build something that's going to be here 50, 60 years from now. The money that we put into our other building, just trying to make it ADA compliant, has been kind of, we've done a lot of that, tens of thousands of dollars to make it somewhat ADA compliant, and it's still not compliant. So it makes good sense to just build a new building that's going to be here. It's going to outlive me for sure, and we'd like to provide that for our community. And so we're partway through our design phase. We've worked with Lewis and his staff to make sure that we consider the city's needs as far as the neighborhood and the streets and sidewalks and those sorts of things. And we just ask that you would consider this and help us to get it built for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Any questions of Bill? Steve?
Mr. Chairman, Bill, tell us about your financing. How you going to fund all of this improvement?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Henderson, we have a $750 or $750,000 CDBG block grant. We went ahead and applied for that. We also have some ARPA funds. We'll probably use the LATCF funding, which is pretty flexible, but there are reporting requirements, and we think that we're probably better off to avoid using our general fund monies for this, use the LATCF fund so that we can report it and get those requirements out of the way and basically avoid costs that would be coming out of our general fund. We also got a legislative capital outlay, assuming, fingers crossed, that it's not vetoed by the governor. I believe that was in the amount of $250,000, I believe. So we have those three funds currently. We're going to continue to pursue funding anywhere we can find it up till the time it's completed. So
What do you think the whole project will cost?
the latest amount that we think it's going to cost is about $5.1 million, and that's without gross receipts tax, so about $5.5 million should be the total cost. And those costs have risen exponentially over the last year or so with supply chain issues, issues with getting employees to show up to work, all those kind of things that everyone in our community is dealing with. It creates longer time, longer waits, and all those things translate to more money. So 5.1 million in round numbers.
Yeah. Well, good luck. That'll be a nice addition to the city and county.
Yes, thank you. We're looking forward to doing it. We brought in the Department of Health immediately and asked them, what would you like to see in your dream health department? We're not going to promise you'll get it, but let's all sit down and tell us how you'd like it designed. And if and when we have to, we'll cut things. But
Yeah.
as it's turned out, we all sat down, we designed within the square footage requirement that we had, and they're going to get pretty much anything that they've asked for laid out the way they want, and we're glad that we're all working together as a community for that.
This is a big lot, so what are you going to do with all that land?
Well, we're hopeful that maybe we can figure out something else to build over there, but probably ultimately we would need to look at picking up that other corner lot, and the lots across the alley would be ideal that way. Well, it's actually not an alley, it's an extension of, you remember the street, Lewis? Poplar. It appears to be an alley, but it's actually Poplar Street that was never developed. And so if we could pick up most of the property across the way and then develop another thing that would provide the parking and whatnot that we'd need. At this time, we don't have any plans for anything, but it just seems like building a complementary building next to it would be beneficial. But that's probably years away.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions of Bill?
Nope.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak against case number 23-002? Anybody against it? I don't see anybody. Do you? I don't see anybody. Okay, then we will go, I would accept a motion on case 23-002.
Based on the land use and zoning considerations, findings of fact surrounding land uses, regulations established in the zoning ordinance, and testimony received this evening, I move that we approve case 23-002 ZOC.
Second.
Thank you, Steve. We got a motion by Steve and a second by Jesse to approve case number 23-002 ZOC. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Let it be known on the record that Richard was not up here to vote, did not vote, and James was absent. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
You're certainly welcome to stick around and the rest of the meeting if you'd like to.
Thanks for the offer.
As he
Okay.
smiles and runs out.
Yeah. Don't trip on the way out there. Meredith, you see Richard out there anywhere?
Just about.
He does. He already does. show that Richard is now back up on the dais, or whatever you want to call this thing. What do you call this thing? What a podium. Yeah, I don't know either. Yeah, I don't know what that even means. Okay, here we go. We are moving along. Next, we are going to move to the proposed public hearing item. It's the proposed text amendments to the zoning ordinance pertaining to Article 52, Building and Performance Standards. Yes, sir, you are up.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chair and Commission. So we started looking over our ordinance. We have a lot of changes that we feel we need to bring up to date. And we figured the best place to start is take a look at the majority of the violations we have. When you have that many violations, you start taking a look at the ordinance and figure if there's something that's just not meeting today's demand. So the biggest one we have is a demand for carports. This has been a long time coming. Roswell has a lot of very interesting weather, to say the least, whether it be Goliath or just bright sunny days or wind or dust or you name it. So we wanted to take a look and start here. So in the packet, we were originally going to look at sections 4, 5, 8, and 10. We're going to withdraw sections 4 and 10 for now so we can review them further. We want to just take a look at sections 5 and 8. So I'm going to start with section 5 pertaining to carports there on page 25 of your packet. You'll see in section C, carport was marked out because we created a new line item specific to carports, which I'll get to in a moment. Section D, we added the text or attached non-enclosed, so the line would read, a non-enclosed porch or attached non-enclosed patio cover shall not project more than 10 feet into the required rear yard spaces. That is already allowed. It is a question that comes up a lot, so we added that just for a little more clarification for the public. Section E is what we added for the carports. The proposed text reads, carports are required to meet setbacks, have a building permit, and pass inspection, and the front edge of a carport may be located behind the front property line or behind the street side yard property line, and shall be located a minimum of 15 feet behind the back of curb, shall not encroach on the sidewalk, parkway, right-of-way, or easement, shall meet the side yard requirements for the zoning district, and have sides open for clear sight of sidewalk and right-of-way for vehicular and pedestrian safety. Community development staff shall have discretion to adjust measurements for safety or clear sight triangle concerns. Those clear sight triangle concerns would also be addressed with engineering to make sure that it complies with any concerns that they may have. And the way we looked at that, I actually gave a handout with a few photos for visual. So I went all over Roswell. I went from the north side, the south side, the base, just getting ideas of how this would look and the best way to propose it. We determined 15 feet from the back of the curb minimum because some of these newer subdivisions have about an 8-foot right of way. So with this current setbacks that we have, a carport must be anywhere from 20 to 25 feet behind that front property line. So there's not a whole lot of room for development for the carports nowadays. So this gives them a little more flexibility to develop within that front yard setback. If you take a look at those photos there, the first one I show within the property, we're showing about 17 feet from the primary structure up to about the fence line, which was what we're guesstimating the property line would be just because the lines were skewed. Now, if you look at the photo under that, I measured from the back of the curb to the projected property line, and that's about 21.5 feet. So there's quite a bit of room there that they can't use. So we figure if we can give them some space to develop within that property line that cannot go beyond their front property line, still within their property, we would still allow them to protect their vehicles. And then I have a few other examples as well. I was trying to show support in that same deal. On the second page there, from the home to the front property line, you have about 19 feet. And then you show the right-of-way underneath it, measures from the back of the curb to the front property line, 18 feet. So this would allow them to build their carport up to their front property line. And to address drainage, we would take a look at guttering or, exploring those options as well.
Miguel, I would say that picture's probably not centered right, you think?
Not the best.
I mean, the right-of-way line look into the alley or the street or whatever is way west of the fence line, and the front property line there on Carver is way back of the sidewalk anyway. Yeah. But do you want to say some more, or do we want to bring up questions on this part?
Depending
5
on
foot?
the zoning district, it's either 20 or 25 feet from the front
So
property
we're
line.
basically cutting 10 foot off of it, or adding 10 foot to, is that correct, or my, well, if it's 25 to 15.
I'm sorry, 15 to 20 feet, depending on the zoning district. So approximately, yes, about 10 more feet, give or
10 more.
take.
It gives them 10 more feet to build the
Correct.
carport out.
We're adding a little more flexibility for them to utilize their property to its maximum. So, I mean, in the newer subdivisions, they have smaller right-of-ways, but some of the older ones, we've seen up to, I think I measured one about 25 feet.
Yeah.
And they have not a whole lot of front yard there. So this would allow them enough flexibility that they can put something in there and at least make an attempt to
There's
protect their
very,
property.
very few lots in this town, unless they're huge, that you could actually, with the current standards, you could build a carport and be legal without getting a variance. Most of them, you're going into it, so.
Correct.
I 100% agree with this.
And
making
that's,
this change.
that's why we brought it in. When we have this many violations that come in, this many variance requests that come in, it's time to take a look at it. And that's why we put this together. And we agreed, after talking with each other, must be a minimum 15 feet behind the back of curb.
What if there's not a curb?
That would be,
Street,
You know, I think you need to add in there like 15 foot behind the back of curb or edge of roadway. Because we have a lot of streets in town that don't have curb and gutter.
okay, we can certainly add that,
just to cover your face.
just to
Yeah.
give more clarification on it.
Yeah, I think you should add that, you know, and to me, right up above it, it talks about, and the front edge of a carport may be located behind the front property line. I think may is a weird word. I don't know if it should be shall, or, yeah, may be
Well, that also leaves it
located.
open to the staff's determination with the current situation, right? Am I
Yes.
wrong?
And I mean, each one of them would go through
It's
the,
gonna have to still go, I
correct.
guess they're not.
They're all still subject to review. That
Except
doesn't mean
if
they
you
can
get a
just put it
permit, you
anywhere.
still have to go through all the normal stuff.
Correct.
Well, it's kind of confusing to me because
Edge of a carport.
you have, you
Well,
know,
the
like a
reason it's like that
minimum
is-
of 15 foot behind the curb, or do you go up the right of way? I mean, like, you go over here at Lee Avenue, there's 100 foot of right of way
Yeah,
on
but
North Lee.
there's some houses that are right, there's hardly anything, so
I
that's
know.
probably why they put that there.
But it's kind of confusing to me. Do you
Yeah, no,
allow,
I agree,
you know, 15 foot behind the curb, or is the right of way line, or, but I was just trying to read through this, it just kind of,
So the way we had originally written it, before we tried to break it down a little more, was it must be a minimum of 15 feet behind the back of curb or up to the front property line, whichever is greater, was how we had originally written it. And then we started breaking it down a little more. So if you have any recommendations on how to clear that up,
yeah, it's kind of like Jesse said, there's just so many different
Well, that's why you have.
situations.
But that's why you
Uh,
have to leave it vague to a degree, so the staff can make a determination on that said
So
property
the-
at the time.
the goal here was to relax the ordinance, make it a little more gray instead of black and white, so we can explore these options. And if it got to be, something that was, it's hard to give a specific example, but if it got to be something that we couldn't specifically answer, then we would approach the variance.
Well,
So
like
that
the
this gave-
first picture you gave us, Miguel, from your measurements, from the house back to the fence, which is not matching the red, which is, I'm assuming the property line, that's measuring 17.6 foot. They couldn't even build out a foot. Their houses, I mean, and is that a side setback? Is that a side or the front of the house?
That would be the side.
So the side is probably what, 5 or 10 foot setback, depending on the area?
I believe it's 15 feet
depending on
currently.
where- So the front of the house, so the parking on that side, and that's just another variation. Some parking's in the front and some parking's on the side, so you've
Right.
got different stuff. So I'm okay with leaving it vague to a degree, because I understand why you guys are doing that.
Okay.
To give a little bit of room to adjust per individual property, being on a corner or being not on a corner, or the park on the side or the front. But I also don't disagree with David that it's not a bad thing to clear stuff up, but in this instance, I don't think it's that bad that it's a little vague or has two different adjustments of measurement, because it gives
Yeah.
you some room to
Well, I
move
agree with
stuff.
that, but it's just, it's gonna open up a lot of, I mean, I don't know how you nail it down, but like, right after the behind the back curb, shall not encroach on the sidewalk, parkway, right-of-way, well, you're allowing, if it's 15 foot behind the back curb, that could still be in the right-of-way
But
in
not
some.
if, not if,
No.
it's not if it's in the right of way though, because that gives you a secondary measurement of, hey, I meet this 15 foot, but okay, you can't have your carport over the sidewalk.
Right,
Am I
so,
understanding that correctly?
so these,
It says you
it
can't go
cannot,
right-of-way either, so.
so a carport cannot project, no, there is no development that can be outside of a property line.
Okay.
So when we said 15 feet behind the back of the curb, now we're looking at, say, the base, where they have property lines that come all the way up to the street. So we measure from the back of the curb, a minimum 15 feet back. That gives people the base flexibility to set up a carport, set up a canopy or something. Now, for some of these other ones, some of these photos I showed you, these were more of a wider right-of-way, so we showed how far back it's set. So we tried to show what would be allowed with this proposal. So they could still build a carport within that, whereas right now, as the code is written, they can't put anything in that setback.
Well, then, the
So
only suggestion
the-
I would have, if we want to leave it like that, would be to back a curve and add in, or edge of road.
Yeah, that means, I mean, there's not always a curb.
Behind back of curb or major road?
That
Yeah.
would be assumed.
Do you
They
think,
would
Lewis, what do you
understand
think?
I'm totally against the changes. I'll wait my turn.
You're what now? You're totally
that.
against all these?
This, what they're trying to do here, from my point of view, they're trying to make it easier for people. They're going to all these people that have had variances and been cited, okay? What is the reason of having planning and zoning ordinances and regulations? To protect the value of your property. Imagine everybody start putting carports as their description, which I disagree with, 15 feet from the back of curb. Well, you know what happens. It doesn't take long in our society for the carports to get full. And then you're gonna start parking behind the carport. Well, guess what? You just encroached on the side distance. You just encroached on any sidewalk. You just, safety issues there. And then the property value, if you look at the property value, everybody building to as much as they can scrunch on and on their property, because it's their property and they can go all the way to the property line, your neighborhoods start, to me, deteriorating in value. I mean, you can see some of the neighborhoods around town with very minor setbacks, where people have taken the carports as far as they can, legally or illegally, and it makes the neighborhood look shanty. It detracts from the value of the neighborhood. So again, all this is we're trying to help the people that are in violation. No, the planning and zoning ordinances that we have are put in there for a reason, safety reasons, and to try to maintain the value of the property and the aesthetics. When we start letting people build on every square foot of their property, I think it takes away from the planning and zoning ordinance what we're trying to do. And I get it where people are trying to squeeze, but I'm one of those that I've seen, and Hobbs is taking a second look at this too. They're building all these new subdivisions, and they've relaxed the setback. Well, now that you relax the setback, yeah, mom and dad buy the house, but it doesn't take long when there's 4 cars, 5 cars, kids' cars, the campers, everything else, and it starts getting junky. So I think this adds to the junkiness of a neighborhood, and that's my perception on the carports. Yeah, people can't build, and I get what Jesse's saying. A lot of people couldn't build it. There's a reason. That's why we built these in. We don't want you to build on every square foot of your property and bring everything up to the front. Because now you're parking, you're no longer off-street parking, you're actually parking on-street parking on right-of-way, because that 15 foot from the back of the curb, how many vehicles do we drive, us that drive pickups, our pickups, full-size pickups are 20 foot. And then when they start coming home in their crew trucks and everything else, it doesn't take long that you're not only sticking into the curb and, into the sidewalk, you're sticking out a little bit into the curb and gutter. And we've all seen those neighborhoods. Picture your neighborhood and everybody building a carport to the edge of their property line. And how many vehicles do they have? And then you're just gonna start parking, and it's gonna make your neighborhood like junky. So that's my position, that planning and zoning ordinances are there to keep the value of the property, to keep the value of the city of Roswell, everything else, plus the safety issues that, you know what happens. But I'm totally against it.
Okay, thank you, Louis. So now I'm a little confused. You guys tell me who all is involved in, Miguel, in the drafting of these things? And, I mean, obviously, did you get Louis involved? I know that's part of the public hearing process, but my standpoint would be that staff ought to make a decision on what they agree with and what they would like to see come forward before it comes to us.
That's
Right.
probably what has to happen, I'm assuming. They have to put something on paper before they bring it to us.
But,
Right.
Yes.
yeah, but to me, it ought to be in an agreement.
Well, no,
across staff.
they don't have to agree. That's ridiculous. They're not always gonna agree with stuff. That's what we're here for.
Yeah, but
to
I
try
think
to
they
help make a
should
decision.
come with a consensus. to
I
me.
know, but I mean, Lewis may disagree with this, and he may agree with the next thing, and
Yeah.
they may not agree with it. That's why you have a consensus of different people. And so, just so I'm clear, Lewis, sorry, I don't mean,
No, that's
I don't mean
okay.
to cut you off.
No, that's good.
So with what Lewis is saying, Lewis, you're saying build to the property line.
No.
Well, you said that many, many times. in
Well,
what
yeah,
you
that's,
just
but
said.
that's what this is saying. It's saying to build to the property line.
That's what I want to clarify.
And I'm against it. I'm against it. I like the restrictions that we have now. I like when Commissioner Henderson goes over there and he wants to build a carport 5 feet from the property line, and we tell him, no, sir, you cannot do it. We need more setback than that. Again, we're trying to protect the value of the property, the aesthetics, the safety, everything else. To start letting it go to the property line, no. And we're doing this because there's so many violations. Think about it in other terms. Just because there's violations, does that now make it legal? Working backwards? I just don't agree with it, because I believe in rules and regulations, standards, and this is a performance standard. I think this is gonna, in the long run, maybe I won't see it, it's gonna devalue the neighborhoods when people all start building to the property line.
So in the proposed change, Miguel, 15 foot behind the back of curb or street, if there's not a curb. And in some cases, that could be very close to the property line.
Yes.
And in some cases, it could be still 10 or 15 foot. There
Correct.
could be additional line in there,
Correct.
because every house is built different. So I'm gonna rebuttal what Louis just said about everything. I don't disagree that building it right on the property line in some areas could possibly affect value. The general consensus is adding an amenity to your property. Now, when I say add an amenity, like a carport, I don't mean like build it out of some pickets and redneck it to death. I mean, it's gonna be built and it's gonna pass. Whether this passes or not, it's gonna have to be up to building standards and codes and be permitted. So we assume it's gonna look nice
Yes.
to a degree. Everybody has different choices, obviously. So adding something to your property like covered parking is not going to decrease the value from my standpoint as a broker. Now, if ever single one of them was right on the property line running down the whole road, Lewis is not wrong that once one or two people do it, more people are gonna do it. As far as the parking thing, people are gonna have cars and they're gonna park where they're gonna park anyways. It's just some cars are gonna be parked underneath parking, covered parking, and some are not gonna be. I don't think if they build a carport, they're gonna run out and buy 2 or 3 more cars. Now, in the instance, if you drove a big truck like me or Lewis, and your truck didn't fit under the carport, why would you build a carport if you couldn't park your vehicle under? That's just my consensus. So I understand what you're saying, Lewis, in a degree to, I don't know how else to say this, in some neighborhoods, it would affect more negatively than others, depending on the neighborhood and the value of the neighborhood. But adding an amenity to the property, and if I was showing a person houses and they had a choice between 2 houses and one had more covered parking or none, and some had some, generally they're gonna go with the one that has covered parking, because the sun is brutal and we don't have much rain, but you understand what I'm saying. So I agree too with the fact that once someone starts doing it, it's possible it's gonna happen. I don't necessarily think they should be allowed right on the property line, but I also know the way it's worded and the fact that there's so many different properties layout in the city that some are gonna be closer than others. I just have to wonder if there's a way to word it, to add a wordage to it where it could not ever be on the property line exactly, like it had to be 5 foot back. But I know that would take some people back out of the possibility of adding, or they're not gonna put up a 10-foot carport and 8-foot carport, they need to make it where they can pull their car underneath it. So I don't know if that makes sense or not, but I agree with Lewis that they shouldn't be allowed like right on the property line, but I do agree that they should be allowed to be a little more laxed, and that a property owner should have the right to build stuff on their property. That's why people wanna own property, to do stuff to their property how they want. But again, what Lewis said, you have to have some regulations, or we'd have 1-bedroom mobile homes on Coronado Drive. I mean, we have regulations for reasons to protect values, like Lewis said. So I don't know if there's a way to add something in there to kick it back where there's some kind of other minimum where it couldn't be right on the property line. That's what I'm gonna say.
So we can certainly explore that. When we first started drafting this, there was never any discussion about placing a carport and it attracting more parking. The idea was to protect property, which Lewis stated we're here to protect property values.
Yes.
To me, this also includes their vehicles. They should have the opportunity to protect the property they have there. They're investing in a property that they've already purchased. We want to encourage them to invest in their property, because
And
it's,
spend money and get permits and buy lumber and all this other stuff that comes along with
yes,
doing changes to your property.
yes. And a lot of the carports that we see come in, they come from places like Home Depot, portables, places like that. So they're engineer designed, structurally sound, all subject to inspection
So
by
in
the building inspector.
This would still apply, this is not just carports that are built on site, this would still apply to, because they make them and bring them and stake them to the ground. That would still be considered, they would be both the same, correct?
Yes,
Because a lot of people do that because it's quicker and cheaper, I mean,
Yes.
from what I understand.
yes. That's what we've seen most favorable.
So is
around
this
here.
something we have to like say yes and no on today, or can you add a little more wording and bring it back, or what is the procedure from here?
We can certainly add some more verbiage, more clarification, and bring it back. The idea is to try to push this along because we are at that time of year where all the carport requests are coming in, but we don't want to rush it. We would rather do it right. So if you have questions and concerns, we would rather address those issues now so we can have your blessing before we start moving forward.
I do have a clarification issue as well, and it has nothing to do with the setbacks. What it is the first line on A where it says, all construction shall comply with the latest city-approved and accepted New Mexico Building Code, International Building Code, International Fire Code. Well, if we take the New Mexico Building Code, currently, it says that we don't need to put sprinkler systems within a home, although the International Building Code says that you do. So you'll have to clarify exactly what we can and cannot do, as opposed to what the 2 different codes are asking. International Building Code says that we're gonna have to have fire sprinklers within the home. New Mexico Building Code says that we don't have to. So when people are trying to decipher what's gonna be allowed in terms of the building end, I think it's gonna be necessary to kind of clarify what building code we're gonna be utilizing versus, what the intent really is and what we can or cannot do on our properties.
Are you referring to section 4B?
B,
Yes.
I think he's on B, yeah.
Okay, so that's the section that we pulled back for further review, because we have more, as we started discussing it, we had more questions amongst ourselves that we wanted to add more clarification between each other before we brought it here.
Yeah, 'cause,
So that one
that's
is
in-
being
That's
pulled
in
back.
section 4A, right? Accessory uses? Is that where, Richard, where you're seeing that?
What page are you on, Richard? Are you
I'm
looking-
Yeah, it's in A and B, so
Yeah. So that's section 4, accessory uses, which is what we, I
Oh,
think
yeah.
you take that
That's
going
not carport.
forward, and Miguel said he was aware of that, but that's, probably, we're not going to be looking at section 4. So we're jumping over
Five
to
is carports,
section 5.
although I'm sure it still has to follow that kind of stuff.
Yeah, section 5, which is exceptions in required yards. But I think it's still a valid point that then I think Miguel's aware of that stuff, that he's gonna be looking at that before that section comes back to us. I think that, I mean, how's this gonna work, Miguel? Are you gonna take this ordinance, do you want it in Article 52, you gonna wanna take it all to them after it's all done? Or can you take, like, if we were to approve section 5 with the following changes,
So
Where does it go from here?
at this point in time, we want to just take sections 5 and 8 if we can, just because we have more research done here. But
yeah, that's what I'm asking. Well, then, will 5 and 8 then go to a council committee for review? Or will you wait until you get 1 through 8 done and ready to go, the whole article?
if you had agreed to pass it to council, it would move forward to council, only sections 5 and 8. If
can make
you,
changes for-
if you want more research done on this particular section, changing the verbiage, then we can certainly pull it all back.
You don't think the council committees are gonna wanna see the whole ordinance? All Article 52
So when-
revisions instead of just section by section?
So I met with Counselor Arnold and Hess, our city attorney, and when I spoke with them, and I believe Meredith had the same conversation, they wanted us to do little bits at a time, because if we started taking too much, it would be overwhelming for them,
That's
and they told us right away they were just gonna kick it back and say no.
Okay.
And so that's why we started taking this approach.
See, and then also too, it says at the very bottom that the staff shall have discretion to adjust measurements for safety. So if you had one that was like right on the property line, and now, so Louis, if something comes to you, so if we said we're gonna approve or pass or recommend passing this or approving this or whatever we're supposed to do, and they went to the committee and they passed it and it gets made the new rules basically, and you had someone come in, you're still gonna, and they said, hey, I wanna build a carport, I heard the stuff changed, you're still gonna go review it and look at the
Absolutely.
site. Staff is, right?
Yes,
Not, but not
we
Louis,
still-
Louis doesn't go look at it though.
We would still be conducting site visits, we would still be out there with the building inspector, and certainly, I never keep Louis out of it.
Well, no, I'm not saying you're not gonna keep Louis out of it, I'm just saying he's not gonna know about every time someone wants to build a carport, so he can go check, you've got more important things to do than that, obviously. So I just wanna make sure that there's, like I said, there needs to be some vagueness to it, because I understand every property's a little bit different. So, but like I said, Louis has got valid points, but you got valid points too. So and the fact that at the very bottom it says the staff, we're leaving it in staff's hands to use your common sense. And in question, if there's something that's like, hey, we're not sure about this, that you would go and ask someone like Louis or recommend it get brought before us to make a final decision. I'm sure we could do something like that.
Yes, and to kind of ease the heartburn on the visibility, the clear side
Well, you
triangle,
gotta realize
the
too,
sides would be open.
Yeah, and you
They-
gotta realize too, I hear from so many builders and people that work, anything to do with housing, commercial, residential, whatever, and I hear so many times about how difficult the city is to work with. Now, that could be termed in about a million different ways, because there is rules that have to be followed, and I understand that. But there should be some gray areas where people can sit down and like, hey, this does make sense. We should allow this. And when you say that and you're allowing it to happen, you're allowing people to generally spend money within the city to improve their property. So that all being said, I'm for this change, with y'all using your discretion and common sense. If there is one that's gonna be like right on the property line, or it's gonna be dangerous, or it's just gonna be totally out of place, you guys do have the power to say, hey, you can't build it right. Well, this says 15 foot. Yeah, well, it also says we have the final discretion to, and if they disagree, they can come before us and present their case and say, hey, I really should be able to do this. And we're like, we will make a decision.
Yes.
For them.
That would be how it would work.
Okay.
On a case by case.
Case by,
Yes, case by case.
if staff deemed it like, hey, we can't do this, and the homeowner was like, hey, I should be able to do this, anybody can come and apply for a variance or whatever they want, because that's why we're here. I mean, we're here to make those decisions.
Yes.
So,
Okay. So I would suggest that we, in our motion, I think we don't want to hold it up and wait another month for them to make a
I
couple of
agree,
little
I agree,
changes.
I agree. I
So
agree.
that we say in our final motion, after we get through all the discussion, we recommend approval or whatever of section 5 with the following adjustments or following wording, and section 8, if there's any changes.
Which we haven't
in
got
it.
to 8 yet, so.
And then we move it on. So
Are we gonna be voting to pass 5 and 8 together, or are those two different separate things? Two separate things? Okay. 'Cause I don't even know what 8 is yet.
Yeah, it's over somewhere.
Fences.
I probably should know, but.
Fences.
It's fences.
Anybody else got any comments, or Steve?
Well, I'm a little disappointed because, in these neighborhoods where we've experienced these carports, and, even though some of them are legal, a lot of them are illegal, and, I think it creates a problem with the aesthetics of the neighborhood. I agree with Lewis that if we turn this thing loose, I think that we'll experience a lot of carports in the neighborhoods, and they're sticking way out in front of the rest of the house, and I think it just looks like junk. So I'm not for this.
Okay.
Well, I think they still can build a carport now, right?
Oh, yes, as
Yes.
long as it's
But
in
it
the
has
setbacks
to-
of
As long as
25
it
foot.
meets
But
the
it has to be a
setback requirement.
25
But
foot setback from the property line.
most houses, there are very few houses with lots deep enough and the house is set far enough back that you could build a carport right now. It's a question I get asked a lot when I'm showing houses.
Yep.
And I don't like whip out my measuring tape, but I can step it off and get it close. I'm like, there's no way you're gonna build it here unless you apply for variance and go through, and what are my chances? I'm like, you're gonna have to bring it before staff and bring it before us.
And I work with any of them that come in. I will gladly go do a site visit. I'll show them exactly what we can do. I'll even help them mark it off to show this is our
That's what
building
I
area.
tell them that they're gonna have to come and talk to you, obviously, but I guess, I get what Steve and Louis are saying to a degree, but you guys gotta understand, man, there's a lot of people in the city that are not happy with the city. And telling people what to do with their property and not to do with their property when they own their property, to a degree, yes, I get it. But opening something up and making something a little more relaxed and saying, hey, you can now build your car, it's gonna make a lot of people happy. Is there a chance a lot of people are gonna do it? Not a lot of people have a lot of extra money right now to be going and throwing up stuff. I mean, some people will, yes. But it's a good idea as long as staff has the final say, which they clearly do, per each one.
Yes.
Anybody else up here wanna chip in?
I
here?
think my biggest thing is kind of with Lewis a little bit too, is stuff right up to the property line. And I think we're gonna see a lot more carports that are the Home Depot style carports, not aesthetically to where it matches the house and looks just like everything else does. And it's, and I don't know if you wanna, well, so right now it's 25 feet from
Back of the property line,
back of the property line.
which is usually.
20.
20?
20 feet from the back of the property line.
And that's usually the sidewalk. I mean, if we're just guesstimating, it's usually the back of the
Guesstimating, yes.
sidewalk.
So that,
Most
like,
of the time, it's in the vicinity.
Yeah.
So that first photo will show
And that
exactly
is
that.
where you can't build, so 20 foot from the sidewalk, then you can start building your carport. And most houses are 20 or, there's a lot of houses that we sell that are in violation of the setback for the house itself. And the house is built, so you can't do anything about it.
Right.
So there's very few properties that you could actually build something and cover. And there's a lot, you gotta remember too, there's a lot of houses that were built without garages or carports, period. It's just a house.
Yes.
So they don't have any covered parking. I don't know, I deal with this every day. This is what I deal with every day. That's why, one of the reasons I'm sitting up here. And allowing our citizens or our community to improve their property, it's not a bad thing.
I tend to agree on both sides, but the current code with it being 20 feet, does the current code say that the community development staff shall have discretion to adjust measurements for safety? Does that have that in that now? Is it in the current?
No.
So why, because if they want to do something other than what is in the code, they come for a variance anyway, correct?
Yes.
So why not leave it the way it is and add the community development staff and so on, that sentence into the existing code?
Well, when you get that many variances, that's what we're taking a look at. We have so many variances that our current code just isn't working the way it should be. So I do wholeheartedly agree. There are rules for a reason. But there should also be enough flexibility there that they can use that property. So if we leave it as is, we continue to pursue variance after variance after variance.
Okay.
And not all of them have been able to afford it. In fact, in the past, I've been known to have carports removed. And we want to be able to work with the public. We don't want them looking at us in a sense that we won't work with them. We can't give them everything we want, but we can relax in some areas. And this is specific to carports only. It doesn't apply to any other accessory structure. It doesn't allow the house to come that far out. This is just a carport. That's where we looked at here. We want to encourage them to invest in their property in hopes that they will come in, they will get building permits, they will invest in the property, they're investing back into the city, and they're legal. We want to
Miguel,
allow
this
them to
doesn't
be able
really-
to protect their property and do it the right way.
This doesn't really pertain to if they wanted to build a garage out to that point. It's
No, the
just,
garage is
it's
closed on the
just a
side.
carport.
You
Th-
can't,
this
then
is-
you have backing out issues. It's like having a fence to your front property line. You can't.
Yes, so this is just a carport.
This is open.
Sides stay open,
Yes.
is not to be enclosed, cannot be
So Miguel,
enclosed like a
I have
garage and
question.
added onto their
Me and
house.
Saul were just talking about it. So right now, the current code is 20 feet from the front property line is the set, but you can't build within 20 feet. Is that
Correct.
For all areas are pretty, it's, some areas change.
In some
Meredith.
zoning districts, it allows up to
20,
15
15 or
feet.
20 or 25.
R3 and R4 will allow 15 feet, so it relaxes setback by 5 feet, depending on the zoning district. So all zoning, residential allows a 5-foot exception or encroachment into the front yard setback.
You're talking, so R1 is 20 feet.
Yes.
So the R1 house setback would be 25 feet, so the carport and a porch, like the front porch, they're allowed to be 5 feet closer to the front property line.
But if the house is built close to the setback, you're gonna have a 5-foot carport.
And the majority of the development is already
And
at
most
that
of it is
setback, so.
already there.
For your golf cart.
Yeah, half of your golf cart sideways. So what if we, in agreement with what Lewis said and not having it right on the property line, the way this is worded, even though you guys will have final say to stop that from happening, what if instead of the way it's worded, you just cut all the numbers in half the way it's worded right now? R1 is 20 feet, what if it went to 10 feet? You could never have something built on the property line, it would still be 10 foot off. Yes, that's gonna take some people out of the loop of being able to do it, but you're still adding 10 feet per per zoning district. Is that something that kind of, because I mean, I get what Lou, I don't want to see carports like right on the property line either. But 5, 10 foot back, I don't see a problem with that.
That's
Who picked 20 foot anyways? Why don't make it 100 foot? Where do these numbers come from? What do other cities use? What is Artesia, Carlsbad, Clovis? Do we know
So-
what they use?
When we looked at them, Artesia uses 11 feet from back of the curb up to the property line. Carlsbad, I believe theirs was 15 feet as well,
From the back of the curb?
back of the curb.
So that's not like the property line, that's the curb.
Correct.
Meredith?
Chair Story, Commissioners, in Lovington, it was 5 feet behind front property line for carports. And it depends, like Louis said,
Well,
how do you want your neighborhoods to
In
look?
different cities and different, I understand
Yeah.
that, but what I'm saying is, to appease, I'm not saying we have to, I don't have to agree with anybody. I'm just saying, what everybody's saying is justifiable, and I agree that I don't want it right on the property line, but I agree it should be lax and opened up some, so why not just cut everything instead of 20 foot, make it 10 foot on R1? And if it's, what is R2 and R3? Is it 15?
15 feet.
R2 is also the same as R1, so it'd be 20 feet.
Okay.
R3 and R4 is 15 feet from property line.
So what if we made them all, just
10
all
feet?
residential could not be closer than 10 feet from the property line? Because I don't see a difference. I mean, I get R3 and R4, you're allowed to have
multifamily. and all
more
that.
stuff on a property, I guess is a simple way to put it. So you need to use every bit of space that you have. I don't necessarily want to see stuff built on the property line or 5 foot, but 10 foot, there should be no problem with that. So
Is that still gonna allow you enough room to build a carport to the?
in some areas it will, in some areas it won't.
So what if
You
we,
have to understand, some properties are, some older stuff is built way out of whack from where, however it passed, or laws have changed or whatever.
okay,
There's
so
a lot of
enter-
houses we sell that, when they do the survey, and we're going over to closing, which is the last thing that's done, the house is built into the setback. And they're like, well, I'm like, well, that's illegal. What do we do about it? Not a damn thing. You can't move the house. And they're usually 4 foot or 3 foot or 5 foot. It's not like it's on the property line. But there's no way they could ever build anything. And if it was right on the property, right on the setback, and we changed it where they could go 10, they could have a 10-foot carport like a Honda Civic or something, I guess.
so
Smart car.
entertaining that idea, it sounds like we're wanting a number here, so not on the property line. So what if we did the 15 feet behind the back of curb, or 5 feet behind the front property line, and state whichever is greater? So they have to maintain a minimum 5 feet behind that property line. So they're keeping that setback, but it still allows the flexibility to add said carport.
5 feet's 5 feet. But you gotta understand, there's some people that just don't have the room and they need a carport, they want a carport. Who the hell are we to tell people what to do with their property, man?
Well, then they can come up with
I
these
get-
guys,
I
and then
know,
they can
I
come,
know.
if they don't like what they tell them, they can come to us.
I say we adjust it to a 10 foot, it has to be 10 foot from the property line. There has to be a 10-foot setback in all areas.
So 10 foot across the board on all residential.
All residential, but they still obviously have the right to come. And hey, I'm only gonna have 9 foot, I need this 20-foot carport. Okay, it's 1 foot off, you know?
1 foot, 2 feet, 3 feet, whatever.
Yes.
Well,
Well,
maybe-
you always have that option, obviously.
And I'm all for, like, exactly what Jesse's saying. I want to do what I want to do with my property, and I understand exactly what Louis is talking about. If somebody puts a tin carport right next to their property line on mine, it kind of sucks.
And most of them are gonna
But-
be the Home Depot ones.
But I think the way it's written is too lax, a little too much, to where when you guys are gone, then it's gonna be interpreted however that may be, because at development staff discretion, that's gonna be changing and changing
Yeah,
and
staff
changing.
is, yeah.
So I think the more clear it is now, is much easier to do than having to leave it at other people's discretions, who know who they may be at that time. You may be thinking of what you want to do right now, what you guys have thought about right now, but that's gonna change
Right.
when you're gone, and when Meredith is gone, when Louis, when we're all gone.
Yep.
And this is about exactly what Louis is talking about for the future, for years to come.
Yep.
Like, we may not see any changes, but, you know, I think it's our responsibility to be responsible with the decisions we do make
Okay.
on that part.
So do we have a number in mind? Are we
10 foot,
looking
I
at
say
10
10
feet?
foot minimum setback,
I support 10 feet.
all our districts, 10 foot. And of course, they still have the right to come and, like I said, someone may, like, well, I need an extra 1.5 foot. Okay, you know what, that makes sense.
It's happened, we've done it,
Well, of course.
yeah.
So I say, I don't know, do we make a motion to do that, or is that something you could, how do we do that?
We can certainly change that up.
Rewrite it?
So we would add the text, let's see, you said behind back of the curb or the road, measured 15 feet off back of curb or road. And then you want to add a 10-foot minimum
10-foot
setback.
from property line,
Okay.
correct?
Yeah.
Louis, what do you think about that? He doesn't like anything.
I'm happy where we're at
I know.
with the rules that we have right now.
Okay, just gonna leave it like that. All right. That's why we like Louis.
Well, I think we make a motion whenever we're done here, and we say with that text.
With adding the
Let me-
additional
Let me
text.
test the water. Let me test the water. In order to give staff a little additional time, in order to give Jesse and others that are interested in this change an opportunity to come up with some verbiage that hopefully would be acceptable to the majority of this body, I would move to table the item until the next meeting in order to give staff and members of the planning and zoning an opportunity to hash it out a little better. That's a motion.
Does that include what discussions we're gonna have on section 8?
No,
or is that
Meredith
just
said they're
for section
separate.
5?
So they will be
There,
separate.
so they're separate.
So
They're separate.
that would be your motion to table the discussion on section 5.
Right.
Push it back. Push it back.
Do we have a second on that?
Not for me. I don't see why we can't make a decision right now, instead of dragging this crap out more and more and more. So I don't know how I disagree with the motion. I don't know
Well,
what
you
I
just,
say.
nobody seconds the motion. If it doesn't get a second, then it dies.
So if this were to pass tonight, move forward to city council, this text, we can still edit. It is still up for discussion with legal. It is still up for discussion in city council.
We're just the first chink of the travel,
Yes,
but generally they go along with what we recommend. That's why we're here.
yes.
They do?
That's
the idea.
Generally. Being optimistic, leave me alone.
Yeah, motion failed.
Any other discussion on section 5? Miguel, are you good with the verbiage that has been discussed?
How do you want the verbiage, so after
So my
minimum
understanding,
15 foot behind the back of the curb, comma, not to,
Edge of road,
oh, well, you know.
Or
sorry,
edge of road.
Or edge of road, that's correct, or edge of road.
and then would be 10-foot minimum setback behind the front property line. Is that, am I understanding correctly?
And a minimum 10-foot setback from property line.
So if they want to encroach within that 10 feet, that's where the variance would come in. And it would be brought to the commission.
10-foot setback from property line.
Yes. Did you get that, Meredith?
You want to make a motion for that one?
I'm scribbling down just to do it, but well, you gotta ask, right? We gotta get to that part.
What part?
To make the motion? I gotta find
Anybody
it.
like to make a motion?
Yeah, give me a second. Let me get the wording right. Which article is this? 50, is this 50?
52,
52,
section 5.
Section 5.
section
Item
5.
E.
Okay. Based on the land use and zoning considerations, regulations established in the zoning ordinance, staff comments, testimony received this evening, and discussion, I would like to make a motion for, is this approval?
Recommendation.
Or
To
make a recommendation?
recommendation to city council.
I would like to make a recommendation to city council to approve or to pass, to move forward. How do you want it worded?
How
To
would-
consider approval of Article 52, Section E, is it E?
Section
Section E,
5.
Section
Section
5, E, with the following changes.
I think all of section 5, because there's some numbers, D got changed, C got
Yeah,
changed.
just say with
F-
section 5 with
So
the following changes.
Section 5 with the following changes. So I just want to make sure to word this right.
Yes.
I'm not gonna read the whole section E, but after 15 behind this, the back behind the curb, comma, we're gonna add in or edge of road, per David's recommendation, and then comma, and a minimum of 10 feet, minimum setback of 10 feet from property line.
Yes.
Does that sound correct?
I'll second that.
From front property line, to be
From the front
specific.
property line,
Yes.
10-foot minimum, that's correct.
Okay, we have a motion from Jesse and a second from Saul to approve Article 52, Section 5 with the proposed changes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All against, same
No.
sign.
No.
Okay, so we have, everybody voted in for, and Steve voted against, so motion passes.
Passes for recommendation to city council.
Correct. Now we're gonna move over to Section 8, which is
All right, so in section 8,
page
take-
7 of 15, Section 8.
section 8.
Yeah, is that page 7 of 15?
Yes.
Okay.
So in section 8, we're kind of strict on the fences as well. For solid fences on a corner, we allow up to a maximum height of 3 feet for clear side triangle, and we allow up to 4 feet on an interior lot. What we're proposing is to allow a chain link fence up to 5 feet in the front yard setback. So they would be able to see through it, just gives them a little more flexibility there to enclose their property, safety. Yes.
That's the only,
That was the only change we have in that section.
4 feet.
Going from 4 feet to 5 feet. 3 feet is for the corner lot.
Access must remain see-through with.
It's 1 foot. Do we have a lot of people asking for a taller fence?
Yes, they always come in and ask for a see-through fence, if they can use wrought iron, chain link, anything they can see
Mainly
through
for the
just
front
to.
yard. It's
Yes.
just for the front yards.
And in the side yard and backyard, we allow up to 7 feet with the placement permit, up to 8 feet with the building permit. So it just allows them to enclose their front yard a little more safety net for them.
That's fair.
I think chain link's good. But if it's 4 foot to 5 foot. Okay.
To be
let's see here, I'm
specific,
still
this
a
does
little-
not allow for any solid fencing, so no picket fences, no R paneling. This strictly for the chain link so they can see through.
But what's the see-through? So the must remain see-through above, so the bottom 3 feet doesn't have to be see-through? It could be like a brick or a block or something?
Yes,
And then 3 to 5 has to be see-through, like chain link?
yes,
That's a line of sight issue, like when you're backing out of your driveway and stuff, you gotta be able to see to get in and out or.
Correct.
so on and so forth. Safety issue, it's a safety thing.
correct.
Yeah, there's a lot of houses on the east side that have brick up 2 or 3 foot and then have metal wrought iron and stuff like that.
Yeah, decorative features.
And it looks nice, but, and you can, it looks way nicer than chain link.
Yes, and
But
that's,
it's also way more expensive.
Or razor wire?
A razor.
so when they come in and they ask, we try to encourage those extra developments, and there are some that look really nice. That's,
Oh, yeah, there's some nice fences. It's 1 foot.
Well, on the next page there, though, it says, on A, fences shall not consist of barbed wire except if the fence is constructed with conventional materials, then no more than 3 strands of barbed wire. Is that for even residential?
Keeps the thievery down.
I thought barbed
no,
wire.
that is for commercial and industrial only, and that is already in the ordinance.
That's all this says, C2 and I2 above it. That is also in residential area, C2,
Okay.
I2.
Any other questions or discussions on section 8? Anybody? Accept a motion then on section 8.
Your turn.
Staff for Lewis?
It's staff on this thing.
All right, yeah, you guys want, Lewis, you okay with this, or?
Yes, I'm okay with this one, and there's even been a few cases in the front, especially depending which neighborhood you're in and who the owners are, elderly people or somebody that has a nursery, the 6 foot in the front. Again, looking at the site distances, they can have 2 or 3 feet up with the brick and then the ornamental or the chain link. Because I see this as a security issue. The 42 inches is the standard side of a compact vehicle with the driver looking out. So that's where that number comes from. And that's ASHTO. That's the MUTC guides as well. But I agree with this one, and in a few cases I have gone up as high as 6 foot. Because in certain neighborhoods, yeah, I can see where a 5 foot and 6 foot does help your security. And then also if what type of dog you have in the front yard.
Yeah.
Because it's important that, yeah, we all love our dogs, but we don't want them to leave the yard and
Or
get
someone to
out.
take them out of the yard.
Right,
I've seen
because I don't know if you guys paid attention, about a month ago, some pit bulls got out, and they were all shot. Unfortunately for the animals and the families, they were loved animals. Just when they get out, they act a little strange, so I think a little bit taller fence might have helped in that instance, I don't know. But I think this is good for people all the way around. Security, especially nowadays, is very important.
Agreed. But this one's only allowing in residential to a maximum height of 5, right?
Yes, and 6 feet in the C3 and C4, which I thought
Oh,
was
it's-
already allowed.
Is 5 foot tall enough for a residential, keep your dog in and stuff?
Depends on what kind of dog you have.
I always had dachshunds, I didn't have any problem.
Got a Great Dane.
I wouldn't be against you guys changing that to 6 foot.
I don't have a problem with that.
I was gonna think the
What's-
same.
I- I
Because
don't
6
know.
also,
See-
it's also a common height for chain link if you're gonna go with chain link.
Yeah.
Let's
6 feet
just,
is more
like,
common.
how do we make a motion
So-
to change it? I say we change it.
We can change it, and then you would state the change in your motion. So instead of 5 feet, it would be 6 feet.
See, these are both under 52.
Chair Story,
We do need to stay.
Yes,
let me just reiterate that this is for front yard fences,
Yes.
this
Yeah.
change.
Yes, yes. Backyard fence is a 6 foot already, you can go to 7 foot, right?
Up to 7 feet.
7 feet.
8 feet
You
with the
can go to
building
8 if you
permit.
ask, right? Like if you hate your neighbor, basically.
Yes.
I had a neighbor that did, not to me, but the other neighbor.
We're seeing some of that more often, too. Or maybe it's just being vocalized more now.
okay, would somebody like to make a motion on section 8?
I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval of proposed zoning ordinance, Article 52, Section 8, fences, walls, and other obstructions to city council, with the amendment of changing 5 feet in height to 6 feet in height
For residential.
for residential front yards.
Second.
Any discussion? Everybody good? Okay, we have a motion by Saul and a second by Jana to approve section 8 with the amendments as stated. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. We recommend going on forward.
Thank you.
Do we have any other business?
Nothing here other than to congratulate Meredith. She is filling in as our interim.
So you're the boss now?
She is the boss now. So,
Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Are you happy about it?
You're
No.
asking him or her?
I'm asking her, I'm looking at her.
Oh, I thought you were
I'm
asking
reading her
somebody
body
else.
language, and she doesn't look super happy. She's given the. Well, Meredith, they're in good hands. I think you do a wonderful job.
Any public comments? Any public out there? Any announcements?
Or do we get a briefing on Kevin's departure?
Yeah.
I don't think anybody knows anything from what I've been able to ascertain, but Meredith, would you?
Not that they can talk about.
Anybody would like to enlighten us on what happened, or no comment?
I have no idea, and I'd prefer to keep it that way.
Okay, we'll move on then.
Other than
Well,
I
I
just wish
thought
him well.
we'd hear it all tonight.
It's the only reason I came. Wasn't in the paper.
I thought this new city manager be here to introduce himself. Didn't Joe come and introduce himself to us?
He did.
The new city manager is still transitioning.
Not
He's
in the
still,
city, not ready, not doing it yet?
yeah, he's not 100% city. He's still part of,
He starts in
RISD.
April.
he had to give a 30-day notice. I believe that's what the superintendent requested of him, to give a 30-day notice.
Any other business? Questions, comments? 7:16, and we are adjourned.
That was fun.